Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to another Elestrals deck profile. Today we have Frost Nexus. So, I have two more decks to get through, those being Fruit and Win Toolbox, but since I've already done those deck profiles on the channel, I thought I'd go through Frost Nexus first, and then go into the two decks that I've already done and the updates that I've made to them. But today we have Frost Nexus, so this deck is very interesting. This deck is probably my favorite play style, my favorite type of play style for a deck, right? To the point where, like, I feel like if this deck was viable, I would essentially be trying to perfect this deck in particular. However, as of right now, I honestly don't think it is viable. And we'll get into sort of why I think it's not viable a little bit later down the line. But without further ado, let's get straight on into this deck. So, Frost Nexus is a deck that focuses on a couple of cards. This is one of them. One of our two copies of Chivalror. And yes, I did pull the full art. I'm so happy. My very first box, I pulled the full art, and I was so happy about that. But this card, for anyone who hasn't seen it, this card can enchant a Frost Spirit from your underworld to any Frost Elestral on your field. And while Mountains of Boreas is enchanted, this Chivalror cannot be targeted by your opponent's rune effects. That's very helpful for a couple of different reasons. One, this card cannot be targeted by Poison Tipped Arrow on summon if you have Mountains of Boreas on your side of the field. It cannot be targeted by something like Gorgon's Gaze to prevent an attack. It cannot be targeted by resting on your laurels or Earthquake, cards that specifically are designed to get difficult to remove Elestrals off your side of the field. The one downside to that effect is that this can still be affected by Shield of Achilles, because Shield of Achilles doesn't target. It just says if your opponent attacks with an Elestral, that Elestral is bounced. It does not specify target that Elestral and return it to the hand. It just, so Shield of Achilles can still affect this, but at the end of the day, just having a big beater on your side of the field that can just constantly be regenerating spirits from your underworld, and also has protection from stuff like Earthquake, like Resting, Gorgon's Gaze, Poison Tipped Arrow. It's honestly not that bad. Next up, we are playing one of our three copies of Frigicub. This card also facilitates an insane strategy, and it's another backbone of the deck. It's the pre-ascension line of Chivalror, and this card says you can Nexus 2 Frost, and when you do, enchant a Frost from your underworld to this Frigicub. So both of them have the effect of enchanting a Frost from your underworld to something, and Frigicub specifically is very good with that effect, because if you Nexus 2 onto this card, you enchant a third onto it. It has to have one in the field already, so this will have 4 under it, with the Mountains of Boreas that bumps up Frigicub to an 8 attacker, which is very powerful. However, we also are playing a card to Nexus onto with the Frigicub, and that is going to be one of our 3 copies of Catarant. Or is it 3? It is 3. I thought I was only playing 2. Weird. I don't know what that's about. I don't know why I thought I was only playing 2, but okay. Well, Catarant is a 3/1 that says when it receives 1 or more Frost Spirits, you can return up to 2 Frost Spirits from your underworld to your Spirit deck. So it's very similar to stuff like Nemisail, Dratagua that you guys saw yesterday. Very similar to those, except for Frost. It's a good card to Nexus onto because it just helps regenerate your spirits, and it just helps you make a lot of amazing plays. Next up, we are actually going to be playing 3 copies of Cryoling. So this card has seen a ton of play in any Frost deck. For anyone who doesn't know, this Cryoling gets plus attack for each Frost in your underworld, and when this Cryoling has 6 or more attack during your main phase, you must either destroy it or special ascend it to a Cryovern from your hand or deck. Now this is very powerful because we can just wait to get 5 Frost Spirits in our underworld, 4 if we have a Mountains of Boreas already up, and then normal cast this, special ascend it into one of our 2 copies of Cryovern, and now we have a 7 attack beater. This is what a lot of decks end up doing. Typically, the Cryovern's effect will not matter unless you are playing Cryo Scorch, of which I am not. the effect does not matter for this card because it's only an effect to help you special ascend it into Cryo Scorch, of which I am not playing in this deck. I just like getting the 7 attack beater because that I feel like is something that this deck struggles with, is big bodies. So I felt like putting in the Cryovern line was very, very helpful. Next up, we are also playing 1 copy of Morphrost. This is essentially a searchable copy of Rise from the Ashes. This card just straight up says, expend 2, discard this Morphrost in order to target and special cast a 1 Spirit Frost Elestral from your Underworld. That's very, very powerful because it's just a good reborn target, can help you get into a Cataract, depending on what's in your hand, to just reach on some spirits, maybe a Frigid Cup to go into some Nexus plays, or what a lot of the times it's used for, to reborn a Cryoling to special ascend it into another Cryovern. Very, very powerful card if that ends up actually happening. For the non-Frost Elestrals we are playing, we are obviously playing the 2 copies of Narpoon, which on normal cast can search a 1 Spirit Frost Elestral, so that's very, very powerful. One of our 2 copies of Jolton, because as it's already been deemed by Shivaror and Frigid Cup, they very, very much rely on Mountains of Boreas, so Jolton's a very good way just to get to that. And then one of our 2 copies of Lavalith to round out the Elestrals. Lavalith, very powerful for that rune control stuff, which is another thing that this deck tends to struggle with. So Lavalith, just a really, really good card to help you get that play rolling. But that's it for the Elestrals. Let's get into the runes. There we go. Got put off to the side. I was having difficulty actually placing it, weirdly enough. First up for the runes, one of our 2 copies of Mountains of Boreas. And I might be questioning why we're not maxing out on this card. And the main reason why I'm not maxing out is deck space. This deck needs a lot of space. Technically, I could drop the Cryoling line, but I really, really enjoy it because it is just very powerful to get that big beater. And Mountains of Boreas is just a nice card to, it's just a very, very nice card. You know, it's nice, but it's not like the end-all, be-all. Typically, your win con is actually a Cryovern a lot of the time, and you're just sort of using Frigid Cup as a means to regenerate your spirit, so you can go into Cryovern multiple times. However, obviously, we do still very much want the Mountains of Boreas on our side of the field. So that's sort of why we are only playing 2. Main reason, deck space. Next up, we're playing one of our 2 copies of Kione. So I'm going to be entirely honest with you. I have constantly said for a very, very long time that, well, I say very, very long time, for probably like 3 months now, that I just do not believe this deck is good. Probably less than 3 months. Definitely less than 3 months, actually, now that I think about it. But this deck is just not very good, unfortunately. In my opinion, it might be the way that I'm playing it. I feel like I'm doing something wrong, but at the same time, I just can't seem to perfect this deck. I feel like the list is fine, but I can't seem to, like, actually be able to get a solid board presence to the point where I'm actually I'm outplaying my opponent in a lot of different scenarios. To the point where I have resorted to just using, I've resorted to going online and looking up how other people build their Frost Nexus decks. And I've been sort of like taking tidbits of information from those and teching them into my personal deck. And in none of the decks, absolutely none of the decks that I looked up were playing Kione. I was looking at that, and I was like, okay, fine. I'll try it without Kione, because I was playing it with Kione for a while, and I was still struggling. So I was like, okay, a lot of these decks are playing it without Kione. Let me test it with Kione. I swear to you, it got worse. I have no clue how you play this deck without Kione. You need Kione in this deck. I don't understand how you play it without it. Not only for its effect, which is not that bad of an effect, you can disenchant a Frost from Kione in order to return a 1 Spirit Frost Elestral from your Underworld to your hand. I'm typically using it as a Nexus bank. I don't understand how anybody uses this card, how anyone can play Frost Nexus without the Kione. I don't understand how it's possible. To the point where I'm questioning if I understand how to play a Nexus deck. I'm starting to think I can't play Nexus decks because I'm just not good at them. But Kione is very, very powerful in this deck, just to be that Nexus bank and also regenerate your Elestrals. It's very, very powerful for that reason, and I love it at 2 copies. I don't really think you need any more. 2 seems to be fine, because if you don't hit it, you just you'll just go off into the Cryovern line, which doesn't require you to have a Kione. But I feel like having Kione, just for the fact that you can Nexus from Frigicub, you can have a Nexus bank for Frigicub's effect is very, very powerful. I think you need to play Kione. I don't see any other way how you can actually play this deck. I don't understand how you can play this deck without Kione. So we're playing 2 copies of Kione. Long-winded way of saying 2 copies of Kione, but there you go. And next up, this is a tech card. I shouldn't even necessarily say tech card, but it is a card that I haven't seen a whole lot of decks running. I very much enjoy it because I feel like it helps out the deck a whole lot. We are playing 2 copies of Blizzard. I'm a big fan of this card. I think it's really, really nice. I think as of right now, Thunderstorm is technically better. I feel like Blizzard could arguably be a whole lot better once Dense Fog releases. But I think Thunderstorm is typically better. Blizzard, however, is the Thunderstorm for Frost. So I actually think Blizzard is the better version of Thunderstorm in this deck in particular. Since we're already playing Frost, we're not forcing ourselves to play more Thunder. For anyone who does not know, this is a 2-cost Invoke rune that just says it cannot be chained by counter runes. Target and destroy an opponent's face-down rune. So the reason why I think Thunderstorm is actually better is that currently there aren't really that many good cards to chain to a Blizzard. What counter runes would you be? What counter runes would you be able to chain? As of right now, we have what? Gorgon's Gaze, Altar of Stars, Tsunami, Shield of Achilles, Poison Tip Arrow. You can't chain a Shield of Achilles or Poison Tipped Arrow to a cast of Blizzard, so that's already out. Tsunami, you're typically not chaining that unless you're in a very, very strange position. And Gorgon's Gaze is also in like that same boat. Typically, the only time you're like chaining a Tsunami to a Thunderstorm is if they target it, first of all, and secondly, if your opponent has already normal cast an Elestral and attack, you can chain the Tsunami to put it into defense so that they can't attack that turn. But if you're playing optimally, you Blizzard first, then normal cast your guy. So as of right now, that first effect just does not matter. I think Dense Fog might change that. I still don't think it's going to be that amazing. I still think once Daybreak releases, Thunderstorm will still be the better version of this effect. But I do really like Blizzard. Long-winded way of me saying Blizzard's very helpful because, as I said with Lavalith, this deck struggles against rune control. We have a built-in way in Frost to have that rune control. And obviously, once Daybreak releases, we have a lot more Frost cards to go through, including a new rune that is Elestral removal. Blizzard being rune removal. If you tend to then max out on those cards, you can have Elestral removal and rune removal. It's not that bad, but that was a long-winded way of me saying 2 Blizzard. I'm going on tangents now. Whatever, let's keep going. Playing 3 copies of Ambrosia. I mean, typically, just typical. But in this deck in particular, I will say, I feel like you do run through a lot of your spirits very, very fast. So having those Ambrosias is very helpful. Because if you are in a position where you're trying to get a Cryovert out, you need 5 spirits in your Underworld. You can just go for the Cryoling eventually, then go into the Cryovern, and then an Ambrosia to get your spirits back. Or if you do the exact play where you already have the 5 in your Underworld, and you go for a Infrostix play to bring the Cryoling back and go for your second Cryovern, that is a lot of spirits, because you're already going to have 5 in there. You're going to expend an additional 2 in order to cast the Cryoling and then ascend it. You're going to expend 3 more to cast that Infrostix, because you're going to do 2 to Reborn, and then 1 to actually cast it, so that now you're down, what is that now? 5, 6, 7, 10? And then you have to once again ascend it, so that's going to be 11 cards that you would have to, 11 spirits that you have to use just for that one play of Cryoling and Frostix. Ambrosia is a really good way to try to help counteract that. So, Ambrosia 3, very, very powerful in basically every deck. This deck in particular, though, I think it is very helpful just to get your spirits back. Next up, we're playing 3 copies of your Gorgon's Gaze, 3 copies of Tsunami. I think I dropped one. Where on earth did it go? I did drop one. Fantastic. There's your 3rd Tsunami. The 3 Shield of Achilles, and then the 2 Poison Tipped Arrow just to round out the deck, because that is just, as I constantly say, this is typical. to just play the deck like this, so that is sort of the ratios that we're playing. That's it for the main deck. Let's get into the Spirit deck. The Spirit deck I actually think is very, very interesting. You guys might already be able to sort of deduce what you think the Spirit math is going to be, but for the first time, we are not running 15 of a Spirit in one of these decks. We are instead running 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, let me straighten that out, 11, 12, 13, 14 copies of Flormine. And yes, maxing out on the Stellars. I love the Stellar Flormine. I think it looks so good. So there's that. We are running 14 Flormine in this one. Let's move these off to the side real quick. You can see the next element right there on the right, which you probably would have expected anyway. But there's 14 Flormine. Let's actually put that like right there. 14 Flormine. We're going to have 1, 2, 3 copies of Leviathan, 1, 2 copies of Vipyro, and 1 Zaptor. So, what are we exactly running for this? Flormine, obviously our primary, get it up to 14. Leviathan, we are running 3 Tsunami and 2 of the Narpoon. So I think this is very, very helpful. For 5 total spirits worth of cards, play the 3 Leviathan. We are playing double Lava Lift, so the 2 Vipyro, and we're only playing 2 Jolton, so the 1 Zaptor. I think that's sort of the correct Nexus math. What am I talking about? Spirit math. You could change some stuff out. Technically, you could take out like a Flormine for an additional Zaptor if you want to run an additional Jolton or something like that. But for the most part, I think this is totally fine for the Spirit math. 14, 3, 2, 1. I think that's good. So that being said, that's going to be it for this video. Really hope you guys enjoy. And please, guys, please let me know down below if there's anything you would change. I very much want to know, because I have had such a bad time with this deck. I love it to death, but I just cannot seem to figure out what I'm doing wrong, because clearly I'm doing something wrong. This deck, I feel like, should be a whole lot better than how it's performing for me, but I'm just not seeing the performance. I'm not seeing it, like, go off. I've heard stories of people like actually being able to hit big. I have not seen it myself, so please let me know what you guys think. That's gonna do it for this video, guys. If you enjoyed, make sure you stop talking about Instagram for more. Hope to see all you guys in the next video. Goodbye.